I'm Jonathan Cadet. Thank you, Vallen, for inviting me for this call. I really appreciate it. Today we'll be talking about workplace wellness, and the idea behind the presentation really is to provide you guys with information on hand hygiene and how impactful and how important that is to providing a healthy and safe environment for your staff, patrons that are walking through your facilities, and customers if that's applicable. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Now, before I jump into the presentation itself, I do want to talk a little bit about GOJO. GOJO has been in the business of hand hygiene for over 75 years. This is really our bread and butter. We are market leaders in this space. We're entrepreneurial, we're a privately held company, and we have the history of investing in innovation, capital equipment, and the workforce. We're a leader in this space, in this category, and we continue to lead the way with the capabilities to meet your needs, including operational support, supply chain, science, insights, and innovation. Hand hygiene is important. And I think everyone could agree that it's even more important today considering the circumstances that we all find ourselves in. So it's important to the individuals, to our society, and to your business during both normal times and during public health emergencies. Next slide. So I do want to touch a little bit about our product portfolio, our workplace portfolio. I won't go into great detail, but I do want to touch a little bit on our dispenser platforms. And so GOJO, like I mentioned, we're in the business of providing health and wellness from a hand hygiene perspective. Skincare products, everything ranging from hand soaps that are hypoallergenic, free of antibacterial ingredients, free of any harsh preservatives, enriched with moisturizers and skin conditioners, body wash products that you would use in the showers if you guys have a wash in or wash down health and safety procedure within your facility, hand sanitizers that are gentle on the skin and kill 99.9% of most common germs that cause illness. We also have advanced dispensing technology. I want to highlight very briefly our ES8 Energy on the Refill touch-free dispenser. This dispenser eliminates the most common complaints when it comes to touch-free dispensers, whether that's for soap and or sanitizer. We've seen a demand and a need to use more touchless product within facilities, whether that's the washroom facilities or the hallways. And so that would encompass the paper towel dispensers, the toilet seats, the water faucets, and include the hand soap and the hand sanitizer. With Energy on the Refill, we eliminate the most common complaints, which are dead batteries and empty dispensers. Each cartridge comes with a coin cell battery in the refill that has enough energy to empty out the entire dispenser. Once that dispenser is empty, once the refill is empty, it's as simple as removing it from the dispenser and replacing it with a fresh new refill with a fresh new energy source that has enough energy to empty out that refill. And so by doing this, you guys would no longer need to worry about replacing dead batteries, the cost of replacing dead batteries, and the labor that comes into play in replacing a dozen or hundreds of touch-free dispensers with dead batteries. We also carry a line of surface disinfectant products that come with worry-free Purell touchable technology, no harsh fumes or residues, as well as wipes to wipe down surfaces throughout the facility. We also do carry heavy-duty hand cleaning products, and these are the hand cleaning products that you would typically use when your hands are dirty with soils, with dirt, with grime. So we carry a line of heavy-duty products that will fit your need depending on what and how and why your employees' hands are dirty. Next slide, please. Germs are everywhere. And again, I think now that we find ourselves in the situation that we're in, germs and employee wellness and health and wellness are top of mind. Everyone has never, people have never thought so highly and thought so much about creating a healthy and safe environment for their staff. And that starts by ensuring that we're disinfecting, that we're washing our hands, that we're cleaning our hands whenever we have the opportunity. Germs are located throughout our facilities, in the meeting rooms, in the break rooms, in restrooms, in the lobby reception. If you have a workout facility in your facility, on desktops, all throughout your facility. And so the idea here is to provide you with the knowledge to reduce the amount of germ transmission within your facility. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the most germy things in your facility. And so what we're looking here is a chart, and the chart is looking at germs per square inch. And maybe this isn't a surprise to a lot of you, but these are the germiest things in any office environment, in any workplace environment. The phones are hands down the germiest surfaces and the germiest things within your office. Desktops come in second place. Keyboards, the mouse, fax machines, photocopy machines. So any item or any product or any object that's exchanging hands, where people are touching them constantly, regularly, and frequently, because germs transmit most often by hands. It's obvious, and maybe it isn't obvious, but any item or any product where you're constantly touching, those would be the germiest objects within your office environment. Next slide, please. The consequences of germ transmission in the workplace. So what we do know through data and science is that more than 80% of illness-causing germs are transmitted by hands. One hand can infect over half of the employees in your workplace by lunchtime. And what we do know is that on average, each absent employee costs more than $2,500 per year. And now, certain governments have enforced various protocols because of the pandemic. And one that we've seen, I think, implemented often is shutting down. And so what we've seen is that if there's a COVID outbreak in your facility, the government will likely shut down operations, and this results in millions in expenses and lost revenue. So before the pandemic, the consequences of germ transmission in the workplace was very, very important. Because of the pandemic, I think it's more top of mind now, and I think the consequences are potentially that much more impactful because, the reality is that people fall ill, and the consequences of that illness are not just the expenses and the lost revenue, but potentially the loss of life. And that's the reality that we find ourselves in today. Next slide, please. Occupational contact dermatitis is another impactful, is another skin disease that's a leading cause of occupational illness. 75% of workers with occupational contact dermatitis can become chronic sufferers. Occupational contact dermatitis is one of the most costly and rapidly expanding conditions in the US and Canada. So direct medical expenses within North America is upwards $1.4 billion, and productivity loss equals to approximately $500 million. This is across all industries. Next slide, please. Contact dermatitis is further exacerbated when facilities and businesses are using bulk soap. For those of you that aren't familiar with bulk soap is refillable soap where you're pouring into a container and you're just constantly refilling that container over and over and over again. Well, studies show that 1 in 4, 25% of refillable bulk soap dispensers is contaminated with unsafe levels of bacteria, leaving hands with up to 25 times more germs after washing than before. And the way this happens is through a number of avenues. Oftentimes, what happens is that the bulk soap dispenser becomes contaminated through ambient air. And so when your cleaners are in the washroom and they're cleaning the washroom and they have the lid open, uncovered, and let's say you flush the toilet, all those particles that were in the toilet, they float in the air and they do eventually end up in that bulk soap dispenser. But the most common way that bulk soap dispensers become contaminated is often through the cleaners themselves. And typically when a cleaner walks into the washroom, what they should do is put on their gloves before they start cleaning the washroom. But oftentimes what will happen is they'll walk over to the toilet, the urinals, they'll clean those areas. They'll clean the floors, they'll make their way over to the bulk soap dispenser. They lift the lid of that bulk soap dispenser, they pour the soap. All of those particles that they picked up from the toilets, from the urinals, from the floors, they end up in the bulk soap dispenser. And that's why 15 to 20% of bulk soap dispensers contain some levels of fecal matter. And that's because the gloves or the hands themselves are contaminated. And so this is a real problem because the idea of providing hand soap to your employees and to your staff is to make sure they have an opportunity to clean their hands. But if they're using bulk soap, that's actually counterproductive because what we're experiencing and what we know through data is that hands are more contaminated after using bulk soap than it was before. And there's no way to properly clean a bulk soap dispenser. Even after soaking a bulk soap dispenser in bleach, it's proven to be ineffective. Not to mention the labor component with having to lift the lid, pour product. It's messy, it ends up all over the counters. And so these are some of the downsides when using bulk soap. Next slide, please. And as a result, again, of the pandemic, supply was constrained from a lot of the traditional manufacturers, such as GOJO, such as Purell, where we weren't necessarily able to meet the demand in the marketplace at the time. The demand was so high and our production capacity at that time was what it was. We've obviously made some huge improvements since then in increasing our production capacity, and we can talk about that one-on-one. Reach out to Marlon, and we can definitely schedule time to talk about that if you guys are interested. But what we saw was an increase in bulk hand sanitizer as well. As a result of the pandemic, the government relaxed their regulatory requirements for hand sanitizer. And so they allowed what they typically wouldn't allow in the market, right? So they, for example, things didn't need to be labeled properly. In other cases, manufacturers were using lesser grade ethyl alcohol or alcohol in general. They were using methanol or technical grade alcohol, which have some serious health consequences, short-term and long-term. And so for this reason, the new chemistry that we saw within our market is potentially unsafe on skin. It's unexpected, unknown chemistry that might cause detrimental reactions such as allergies. And not only that, but the products themselves aren't meeting the regulatory requirements such as product origin, expiry, lock codes. The experience, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this yourself, you walk into a restaurant, you walk into a grocery store, you walk into whatever public space, and there's typically someone standing there, and they're telling you, they're pointing at that table, they're pointing at that bulk hand sanitizer, and they're asking you to sanitize your hands before you step further into the building. And a lot of people, at least in my experience and from the feedback that I've gathered, a lot of times that product is not very good. It's smelly, it stinks, it's sticky, it causes skin irritation. It leads to poor guest experience, poor employee experience. Not to mention that now what we're seeing is a mixing of hand sanitizers. And what we have to remember is that hand sanitizer is a volatile component. It's registered with Health Canada as an over-the-counter drug because of the alcohol content. And so there's a loss in efficacy because folks now are mixing product. They're mixing hand sanitizer that is 70% alcohol with hand sanitizer that's 90% alcohol with hand sanitizer that's 62% alcohol. All of the above is a real problem. And so we want to make sure that we inform you guys so that you have the tools necessary to make the right decisions, to make sure that you guys are buying the right type of hand sanitizer. Next slide, please. The simple truth is that hand hygiene is a significant preventative measure in maintaining well-being. Businesses, organizations are looking at ways at reducing absenteeism and managing healthcare costs. A simple way to support your wellness program is by emphasizing the importance of hand hygiene in the workplace, because what we know is something as simple as washing your hands at the right time minimizes the spread of germs, it impacts doctor visits, it helps reduce absenteeism and presenteeism, it improves employees' quality of life, and it increased employee satisfaction. Studies show that an effective hand hygiene regimen can help reduce absenteeism by 51%. And we know that keeping hands clean is one of the best ways to prevent the spread of infection and illness, germs, viruses, and bacteria. Next slide, please. Now, we'll talk about more specifically about alcohol-based hand rubs, when to use alcohol-based hand rubs, some of the myths surrounding washing your hands with soap versus washing your hands or using alcohol-based hand sanitizer to clean your hands. So the Public Health Agency of Canada recommends the use of alcohol-based hand rub or hand sanitizer as the preferred method if your hands are not visibly soiled and dirty, which accounts for most hand hygiene opportunities. If there's no sink available, use hand sanitizer to clean your hands. Soap is designed to physically remove any dirt, any visible dirt, and any visible soil on your hands at that time. Hand sanitizer is designed to kill the germs and bacteria on your hands. That's the difference between alcohol-based hand rub versus using hand soap. Next slide, please. What's also very important is you have to ensure whatever hand sanitizer you guys are using in your facility, or whatever the delivery method is, you have to make sure that you're using the right amount. Oftentimes, we're not using the right amount. The Public Health Agency of Canada, they recommend a wet time of 15 to 20 seconds to achieve best results. And by best results, that's achieving a kill rate of 99.9% of germs on hands. The right amount of product to keep your hands wet for 15 to 20 seconds is 1.1 ml worth of hand sanitizer product. If you're using less than 1.1 ml worth of hand sanitizer product, your hands are not wet, or the recommended wet time, which is 15 to 20 seconds, which means that you are not killing the germs that the hand sanitizer is meant to kill. So I would ask you guys to look at the hand sanitizer solutions that you're currently using in your facility. Test it out yourself. Take one dose, use one pump, check if your hands are wet for 15 to 20 seconds. If they're not, if they're drying much quicker than that, then you're not actually getting the best results possible. Next slide, please. We also want to make sure that we're sanitizing our hands properly. So there's a proper way to sanitize our hands and to wash our hands. And we want to touch on a few things. We want to make sure that we're cleaning between our fingers, underneath our nails, our fingers, back of hands, our palms, and our wrists. And so this graphic here just shows the step-by-step instruction on how to properly sanitize your hands. By following steps 1 through 8, it really should only take you 15 to 20 seconds. Next slide. Now, washing your hands with soap and water, there are very different instructions. You want to make sure that you're using lukewarm water, not cold water, and not hot water, because using either or causes damage on your skin. Water in its nature removes and reduces the natural lipids on your skin, and frequent hand washing will eventually reduce the natural lipids on your skin, the natural moisturizers, and that's what keeps your hands healthy. And so when you're washing your hands frequently with soap and water, that's the result. You often get dry hands. Now there are ways to mitigate that. One of the ways, and we'll touch on this in the next slide, is to use alcohol-based hand rubs as often as you possibly can. Next slide. So I just want to dispel some myths about alcohol-based hand rub. Myth 1, soap and water is gentler on my skin. And I just addressed this. Overuse of soap and water causes damage to the outermost layer of the skin by dissolving lipids that are necessary in retaining the skin's moisture. This results in dry, flaky, irritated skin. Myth 2, alcohol-based hand rub dries out my skin. Good alcohol-based hand rubs typically have moisturizers within them, and so they don't remove the lipids on your skin. In fact, they add to it. Myth 3, soap and water works better than alcohol-based hand rub. The studies are very, very clear. ABHR has a very well studied and superior efficacy over soap. And myth number 4, after every 3 to 5 use of alcohol-based hand rub, I should wash my hands with soap and water. Again, this is not necessary. If product buildup develops, it can be washed off, although it is best to reserve soap and water for when absolutely necessary. Next slide. If you just want to, yeah. Thank you. So these are some of the best practices to just as a reminder when it comes to using soap and sanitizer. So you can use alcohol-based hand rub as a preferred method when hands are not visibly soiled or contaminated. Minimize hand washing with soap and water, except when hands are visibly spoiled or contaminated or when specified by your facility. Use lukewarm or cooler water, not hot. Pat hands gently. Use lotion frequently, lotions that are compatible with the provided hand hygiene products, and protect your skin when you're not working. So wear gloves when it's cold outside, dry weather, and use mild soap at home, and apply a thick, high-quality lotion. Next slide. So I want to talk a little about also cleaning and disinfecting on surfaces. There's a lot of confusion out there, especially with the pandemic. People are now cleaning surfaces more often than not, and they often don't understand the differences between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. Cleaning, as it's identified by Health Canada, is a substance or mixture of substance that physically remove foreign material from surfaces. In other words, what cleaning does is it removes any sort of visible material that is on a surface at that time. That is all it does. It does not sanitize and it does not disinfect. Oftentimes people use cleaning, sanitize, and disinfecting interchangeably, and they're actually three very different applications. Sanitizing reduces the bacterial population, but it does not destroy or eliminate all bacteria on surfaces. Instead, they reduce the number of bacteria and only bacteria to a safe level. Disinfecting is the broadest spectrum of activity. Surface disinfectants provide the most effectiveness against different kinds of microorganisms, including bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Next slide. So that's a typo at the top. It actually should say chemical dues. Again, a lot of folks are, in some cases I've seen a lot of folks are becoming scientists where they're mixing their own chemicals. They're buying alcohol in bulk and then they're diluting it, or they're mixing bleach with some other solutions. Do not do that. It's potentially very dangerous and you're putting people's health in harm's way. You want to first read the product label. So you want to make sure you understand the product label before using the product itself. Make sure you understand the safety precautions and the hazards. Maybe you need personal protective equipment. What are the first aid procedures? How do you dispose of the chemical? How is it used? When do you use it? And if you do need to use personal protective equipment, make sure you do use it. Make sure you use chemical resistant gloves, long sleeve garments, respirators if that's the case, and only use product for its intended purposes. Don't ever use something that it's not intended to use. Next. Chemical don'ts: do not mix sanitation products. Many people don't know mixing bleach with vinegar is dangerous. It's very dangerous. Do not mix products. Never mix multiple products. Mixing chemicals, like I said, can cause toxic fumes, leading to injury and even death. Don't store cleaning and sanitation products in an unsafe manner. Store products together by chemical type and hazard code. Store reactive chemicals separately from each other. Avoid spilling on the floor and clean following the instructions listed on the label. Products should be labeled with instructions, risk, and necessary safety precautions, and they should be stored in their appropriate containers and original packaging. Next slide. So the recommended employee program, we want to make sure that you guys are washing your hands upon arrival at work, after using the restroom, before and after eating. Use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer or wipe before and after meetings, and when leaving work at the end of the day. Clean all the surfaces within your facility, the high touch points, the doorknobs, the keyboards, the mice, the tables. Wipe down high touch point as needed, as desired. Sinks, microwave, door handles, countertops. Next slide. So GOJO's value proposition within this space, it's to provide, ultimately it's a 4-point workplace wellness solution comprising of sanitizing, general cleansing, heavy duty cleaning, and conditioning. And the idea behind this is to, again, lower healthcare costs, keep workers productive and on the job, and improve employee satisfaction with products their employees know and trust. Next slide. And that's the end of the presentation. That's all I have, guys. If you have any questions, please reach out to Marlon. Please reach out to Vallen. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was very informative. I don't think I'll look at my desk the same way, knowing the germ warfare that's going on. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time today to join us for this informative session, and thank our vendor partners, Brad, Young from 3M, Gord Hayes from Keto, and Jonathan Cadet from Purell GOJO. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to use the chat or reach out to your sales representative, Marlon or Terry or myself. Vallen is definitely open to a lot of feedback and information, and look forward to hearing some feedback from all of you that attended, just to see how well informed you or what takeaways you have from this session. I'll leave it, give it a few minutes in case anybody has some last questions that they want to post, but it looks like everybody's pretty interested in copies of the slide presentation. Stephanie, are we going to be posting the PowerPoint online, or?
We'll send out to all of the attendees the link to the page with the full recorded session, along with any of the additional files or resources that go along with the presentations.
Okay, beautiful.
And thank you to all of our presenters, and thank you to Vanessa for taking us through this session. If there's any final questions, the chat will remain open. But I think that concludes today's webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.